The jazz music had faded to a whisper, but my fingers kept dancing across the keyboard. The bar was empty except for me tucked in the corner booth where I'd been nursing cocktails and chasing deadlines for the past 4 hours. Through the large windows, I could see the French Quarter settling into that magical hour when tourists stumbled home and locals claimed the streets. The bartenders moved like shadows behind the counter, wiping down surfaces, stacking glasses, their movements, synchronized from countless closing routines. Last call was an hour ago, you know. The voice came from Marcus, the head bartender, tall and broad-shouldered with hands that mixed drinks like a pianist playing jazz. He approached my table bar, towel thrown over his shoulder, that knowing smile playing at his lips. I looked up from my screen, pushing my glasses up my nose. I know I'm sorry. Just let me finish this paragraph and I'll... Or, he interrupted, glancing back at the other 3 bartenders still working. You could stay for our monthly tasting. We try out new cocktail recipes after hours, could use a fresh palate. Behind him, the others had stopped their closing duties. James, lean and quick with a mischievous glint in his eyes, was already pulling bottles from the top shelf. The twins, Daniel and David, identical down to their rolled-up sleeves, exchanged a look I couldn't quite read. A tasting? I closed my laptop slowly. What kind of journalist would I be if I turned down a story about New Orleans cocktail culture? Marcus's smile widened. Exactly what I was thinking. Before we get deeper into this night, do me a quick favor. If you're enjoying this story already, hit that like button and subscribe. It takes just a second and helps me bring you more stories like this. Trust me, you won't want to miss where this evening goes. Now let's continue. I moved to the bar, settling onto a worn leather stool as the 4 of them took positions behind the counter like actors taking their marks. The overhead lights dimmed to amber, casting everything in a warm, honeyed glow. Marcus set down a row of glasses, each one different, coupe rocks, highball each, catching the light, like crystal promises. First rule of our tastings. James said, already muddling something fragrant in a shaker. You have to guess the ingredients. And if I guess wrong? I asked, already feeling the warmth from my earlier drink spreading through my limbs. Daniel stepped closer, his fingers brushing mine as he adjusted my glass. Then you take another sip until you get it right. The first cocktail appeared before me. Deep ruby red with a foam top that looked like crushed velvet. I lifted it to my lips, the scent hitting me first. Cherry, something darker, a hint of smoke. The liquid touched my tongue and I closed my eyes, letting the flavors unfold. Bourbon. I murmured, cherry, obviously, but there's something else. Keep going. David encouraged, moving behind me. I felt his presence warm and solid as he reached past me for a bottle Amaro. I guess taking another sip. And is that chocolate bitters? Marcus raised an eyebrow, impressed. Not bad for someone who's been drinking all night. The night's just starting. James said, already working on the next creation. Ice clinked against metal as he shook with practiced rhythm, his movements almost hypnotic. The second drink was pale green, garnished with what looked like a flower. Before I could taste it, Daniel moved closer, his hand settling lightly on my wrist. Wait, he said softly. Close your eyes first. I obeyed, aware of how my other senses sharpened. The glass touched my lips, cool and smooth. The liquid was bright, herbaceous, with a kick that made me inhale sharply. Gin, I said immediately, and absinthe? Very good. Daniel murmured, his thumb tracing a small circle on my wrist. What else? I took another sip, this time noticing how David had moved to my other side, his hip brushing against my arm. The warmth of their proximity mixed with the alcohol, creating a different kind of intoxication. Elderflower, I decided, and fresh basil. She's a natural, James commented, but his voice seemed to come from far away. Everything was starting to blur at the edges, not unpleasantly, but like looking through rain-streaked glass. Marcus set down another drink, this one smoking slightly, the vapor curling up like ghostly fingers. This one's special, he said, his voice lower now. Our signature creation. I reached for it, but he caught my hand, his fingers warm and firm around mine. This one you share, he said, lifting the glass to his own. Lips first, then holding it to mine. The intimacy of the gesture sent a shiver down my spine. The drink was liquid fire and velvet sweet heat that pooled in my stomach and spread outward. I could taste where his lips had been adding another layer to the complex flavors. What's in it? I asked, my voice coming out breathier than intended. Secret recipe. James said suddenly, much closer. But we might be persuaded to share. The air had changed, charged with something electric. Daniel's hand was still on my wrist, David's body warm against my side. Marcus stood directly in front of me, and James had moved behind the bar to join us on this side. I started, but the words dissolved as David's fingers traced along my shoulder. Stay. He said simply, the night's best discoveries happen after closing time. The tasting continued, but the drinks became secondary to the touches, the looks, the way they moved around me like a perfectly choreographed dance. Each cocktail came with a story, a touch, a moment that pressed closer to something inevitable. Marcus mixed something with violet liqueur, the color deep as midnight. As I sipped it, James's hand settled on my shoulders, kneading gently. Tension, he murmured. Occupational hazard for writers. The twins worked in tandem, creating a drink that seemed to shift colors in the light. Daniel fed me a candied violet from the garnish, his fingers lingering against my lips. David's hand had found its way to my lower back, steadying me on the stool as the room spun gently. I said, my words slightly slurred, but my mind crystal clear in its intent. That this tasting is about more than cocktails. Marcus leaned across the bar close, enough that I could see the flecks of gold in his brown eyes. Everything in New Orleans is about more than what it seems, he said. The question is, are you ready for the real tasting? I held his gaze, aware of the heat building between us, the weight of anticipation in the air. Show me, I whispered. The serious mixing ended. Then bottles were capped, shakers set aside. Marcus came around the bar, taking my hand and drawing me to my feet. My legs were unsteady, but not from the alcohol alone. Back room? James suggested, his voice husky. Too small. Daniel set his hands, finding my waist. David's lips brushed my ear. Office upstairs, it has that leather couch. They moved as one, guiding me through the dimly lit bar toward a narrow staircase I hadn't noticed before. Marcus led the way, his hand firm in mine. The twins flanked me, their touches light but possessive. James followed, his presence a warm weight at my back. The office was all dark wood and leather, dominated by a massive couch that could easily fit all of us. The city lights filtered through Venetian blinds, casting strips of gold across the floor. Marcus turned to face me, his hands framing my face. Last chance to call this just a tasting, he said. Softly, I answered by pulling him down for a kiss, tasting the cocktails we'd shared on his lips. His response was immediate, hungry, his hands tangling in my hair as he deepened the kiss. I felt the others close in, hands and lips, and warmth surrounding me. James's mouth found my neck, his stubble sending shivers across my skin. The twins worked in perfect harmony, Daniel's fingers tracing patterns on my arms while David's hands explored the curve of my waist. My dress slipped from my shoulders, though I couldn't say whose hands were responsible. The cool air raised goosebumps on my skin, quickly chased away by warm touches and heated kisses. Marcus's shirt joined my dress on the floor, revealing a chest that spoke of more than just mixing drinks. I ran my hands over his skin, feeling the muscles flex under my touch. Behind me, James pressed closer. His own shirt discarded the heat of him, seeping through the thin fabric of my remaining clothes. Twins had shed their uniforms as well, moving with that eerie synchronization that made it impossible to tell where one ended and the other began. Hands guided me to the couch, laying me back against the soft leather. Marcus knelt beside me, his lips tracing a path from my collarbone downward, each kiss deliberate and worshipful. James settled on my other side, his mouth finding that sensitive spot just below my ear that made me inhale sharply. The twins took their time, one at each leg, their touches mirroring each other as they worked their way up from my ankles. Every nerve ending seemed to spark to life under their attention. I lost track of whose hands were where, which lips were tracing patterns on my skin. The sensations blended and multiplied, building like a perfectly crafted cocktail, each element distinct yet part of a greater whole. When Marcus finally claimed me fully, it was with the same careful attention he gave to his craft, slow, deliberate building, the experience layer by layer. The others didn't retreat, but stayed close, their touches and kisses, adding to the symphony of sensation. James's mouth found mine, swallowing my gasps as Marcus found his rhythm. The twins' hands roamed freely, one tangled in my hair while the other traced patterns on my thighs. Time lost meaning. There was only the slide of skin against skin, the mingled breathing, the soft sounds of pleasure that filled the room. They moved me between them like dancers, passing a partner, each taking their turn to lead, while the others supported and enhanced. Daniel's gentle strength contrasted with David's playful teasing. They worked together, one setting a steady pace while the other found creative ways to multiply the sensations. Their synchronicity was mesmerizing, like watching a perfectly rehearsed performance where I was both audience and star. James brought intensity. His movements confident and sure, he knew exactly where to touch, how to move to draw out every response. His eyes never left mine, watching my reactions with the same focus he gave to crafting the perfect drink through it all. Marcus orchestrated like a conductor, knowing when to step forward and when to let others take the lead. His experience showed in every touch, every kiss, every moment, perfectly timed to build toward something greater. They layered pleasure like ingredients in a complex cocktail, each addition carefully measured to enhance rather than overwhelm. The leather beneath me grew warm and damp as our bodies moved together in increasingly urgent rhythms. I reached the peak multiple times, each climax rolling through me like waves against the shore. They didn't let me come down completely, between crests, keeping me suspended in that space where pleasure bordered on too much, yet remained just right. The final movement came with all of them surrounding me, their combined attention focused entirely on my pleasure. Marcus set the pace, while James's kisses swallowed my cries. The twins' synchronized touches across my body created patterns of sensation that seemed to rewrite my nerve endings. When the ultimate wave crashed over me, it was with such intensity that my vision whited. Out at the edges, I felt them follow one after another, their own releases adding to the symphony of satisfaction that filled the room. We collapsed together on the wide couch, a tangle of limbs and satisfied sighs. Someone pulled a blanket over us, soft cashmere that smelled faintly of bourbon and mint. I lay in the center of their embrace, feeling completely satiated, yet already wondering if this was truly just a one-time tasting. So, Marcus murmured against my hair, his voice rough. With satisfaction, "What's your review of our special menu?" I laughed, the sound husky and content. 5 stars would definitely recommend, though I might need to come back for another tasting to be sure. We do this every month, James said, pressing a kiss to my shoulder. Sometimes more often. Daniel added his fingers, tracing lazy patterns on my hip. If we find the right taster. David finished, mirroring his brother's touch on my other side. I stretched luxuriously, feeling deliciously used and thoroughly satisfied. Outside, I could hear the early morning sounds of the French Quarter coming to life. Delivery trucks rumbling past, the distant call of street sweepers, the first tentative notes of a saxophone somewhere down the block. I should probably get back to my article, I said without any real conviction. Stay. Marcus said simply, "We'll make breakfast, hair of the dog that bit you." And maybe, James added with a grin I could hear in his voice, "we can give you some more material for your story about New Orleans cocktail culture." I settled deeper into their warmth, decision made. Well, when you put it that way, I suppose I do need to be thorough in my research. As dawn painted the windows gold and rose, I closed my eyes, surrounded by warmth and the lingering scent of cocktails and satisfaction. My article could wait. This was the real story of New Orleans, The magic that happened after closing time when the city showed its true face to those brave enough to stay and see. Last call had meant something entirely different that night, and I had a feeling I'd be answering it again very soon. Some nights end when the bar closes, but others are just beginning. Have you ever stayed past closing time and discovered something unexpected? What would you do if you were offered a private tasting like this? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single one and love hearing your stories. And if you enjoyed this tale of after hours adventures, don't forget to like and subscribe. Hit that notification bell so you never miss the next story. Until then, sweet dreams.